Could you see my screen? Can somebody confirm me? Perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's start the show. 16th February, 8. Okay, it's 8:02 p.m. in Saudi Arabia. Microsoft Excel and Power Platform Meetup. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to this lovely meetup place. Thank you for joining and always being here. And today, as usual, we are arranging the meetup. And today we have a guest from Nigeria, my friend Victor. And Victor is an engineer in petrochemical company, and he is passionate about Excel. And I have no words to say about him, because he is an excellent guy, and the way he delivers his meetups, and the sessions is amazing. So it's an honor, to have Mr. Victor over here, and he will brief more about himself, when I will hand over him the mic. So coming to the next screen, as usual, you know that I'm Faraz Shaikh. If you don't know me, I'm Faraz Shaikh from Excel Exciting, founder of excelexciting.com. I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, Microsoft Certified Trainer, MIE, and I do write blogs and YouTube videos, and I run this meetup. And as usual, with another Avenger today, Victor, I'm here, who is an Excel Avenger, to help the community, to give them the easiest solution and quickest solution. And as usual, my passion is to share the knowledge and gain the knowledge on Microsoft Office applications or any technology which is there. And you can follow me anytime on my social media accounts. So you can just grab me over there. And one good news that I would like to share with all of you, my YouTube channel have hit 1 million views, and this wouldn't be possible without your support, the community support, the love which I'm getting from the people, my viewers, everybody. Thank you so much for this love, and this wouldn't be possible. And it's coming back to the next screen, and these are some of our past meetup which has happened in 2021. And so in case if you have missed it out, you can feel free to scan the QR code, and you can always go and see the recording. And there was another event which was happened last month, which was happened with Microsoft Special Team was there, and even that recording is also available in that playlist. So you can always go and check that. And then we have our upcoming meetups, which is already where Victor is already here. So he will be delivering versatile lookup functions, and then Carlos, Excel charts with dynamic arrays. This meetup will be announced, inshallah, today. I'll be announcing it on my meetup page today, but I'll be announcing it in a different way this time. So stay tuned, be connected on my social media channel. Victor knows the secret, so that's why he's smiling. I can see that. And then we have Harsh. Harsh is the youngest speaker who will be coming on our meetup. He is a speaker, 15 years old speaker from New Zealand, and we are still finalizing, the content, but most probably it will be on Power BI or Excel. And he would be the youngest speaker coming on our meetup, so that's an honor for me to have him over here. And in fact, Harsh was here before, where he delivered what's new insights about Power BI. In one of our past meetup, he delivered this session also. So we are looking forward for all our great speakers. And as usual, in the community, we know there are a lot of superheroes out there, and we need those superheroes to please come in front, connect with us, and share your knowledge on any kind of application, Microsoft Office, Power Platform, Azure, Google's, something related to technology that can ease our life. We'd be really happy to hear from you. So anybody can write me back on my email address, excelexciting@outlook.com, and I'll be happy to reach them, and then we can schedule a meetup. Lovely. So Just a quick housekeeping you all might be knowing about. We'll be not going through all of them because most of them, they know it. But this session is getting live streaming and recorded, and the recording is available on YouTube/Excel Exciting. And you can find it in the Saudi Arabia playlist. So feel free to check that out. And we have that lovely guest, the hot seat guy over there, Victor from Nigeria. So Victor, my friend, you can feel free to unmute and you can talk, and we would be really happy to see the versatile lookup functions. We had heard last time about getting hyper with hyperlinks. Now let us see how we are going to get versatile with lookup functions. So over to you, my friend Victor, and feel free to introduce yourself, and the stage is yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So confirm you can still hear me. I think that is a yes.
Sorry?
Well, I wanted you to confirm that you could hear me, right?
Yeah, you can, please feel free.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, so good, well, depending on where you are, so good day, I think. I don't know if it's morning, evening, or night, but it's 6 p.m. here in Nigeria. So I would say good evening to you. And first of all, thank you, Faraz, for this opportunity. I really, really appreciate it. I mean, I don't take it for granted. Thank you so much. I kind of lost my voice over the weekend, so I sound a little different, but hopefully not too harsh, but you can still hear me. Yes, so my name is Victor. I'm always very bad at introducing myself. It's always a challenge, but I think the little things here. So, okay, Victor Momoh, I'm a petroleum engineer, chemical engineer by training, but petroleum engineer by practice. Yeah, but I know that's one question that gets asked a lot, like, what does a petroleum engineer do with Excel? And I'm always like, well, so long as you deal with data, it doesn't matter, what your discipline is. There's always something for Excel, to help you with. Okay, so I also am one of the, I'll say, admins of the Nigerian Excel users group. So it's a big group on Telegram. It's grown now. We have about maybe 1,700 people, there. So it's more like just a forum, just come there, post your questions. There will be somebody to pick it up, answer the question, and also maybe share some, extra information. Sometimes maybe too much information too, on the question that has been asked. So it's a group of passionate, Excel users, and we are doing great things. So watch out for us, I would say. Okay, so with that, being out of the way, I think we'll just go into what we have for today. I think after the London Excel Meetup, there's Oz came up with this nickname for me, Mr. Heart Attack and stuff like that. So in preparing for this, Faraz was like, he was going to get the ambulance ready if we need it, but I told him we won't be needing it because it's just going to be things that we already know, maybe reminding us of some things we know, and also showing a few things we may not know. So I apologize if you know everything I'm going to share. Please accept my apology in advance. But let's get into it. Let me just share my screen, and so we can get started. Okay. So I take it that you can see my Excel sheet, right?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, good. So let me see if I can move this out of the video. Sorry, some housekeeping that needs to be. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, all right, yes. So we're talking about, the versatile lookup functions today. So essentially, I'm talking about lookup functions. Sometimes you just want to have a catchy, title. If you just say lookup functions, it feels too normal, So I just put versatile. But the word isn't just to, maybe attract, people's attention or something. It's really because the lookup functions are very versatile. And I'm just going to show, a few ways that they can come in handy. So by the lookup functions here, I'm talking about index, talking about VLOOKUP, talking about lookup, talking about XLOOKUP, and I could even add one or two others to that. I could add the choose function to that, and I can also add even the filter function, because in some sense, it does work like a lookup function. So that's really what we want to talk about, today. I'm just going to be showing a few examples, and that will be it. But Faraz, if at any point you need to deploy the ambulance, please feel free to do that. Okay, so all
I
right.
have kept the ambulance ready outside, after the tricks. The ambulance is ready for me.
All right. I hope I won't be the one that will be carrying away though. Okay, so I just listed a few of the functions here, in terms of, some of the lookup functions that I already mentioned, and just showed, their syntax. I know a lot of us are probably familiar with them, and we know that, whichever argument you have in square brackets is optional. So you can see that most of these functions have, an optional, argument. So these are some of the functions that we're going to be talking about, today. And what I've tried to do is to try and make it, cut across maybe all versions of Excel. So there will be some functions that seem to work.
I'm sorry, we have just lost Victor. Let's wait for him to get connected.
It's just getting interesting.
Victor, it's before the start,
I'm back.
you're giving us a heart attack, before the start.
Okay, so sorry about that. I think my network was trying to switch to something else. I don't know what's going on.
No problem.
I have multiple modems or routers, so I guess it was just trying to. I don't know why it did that. Okay, all right. So you can still see my screen now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, yes. So so let me go into the first example, and then I'll just take it from there. Well, hopefully it gets easier as we proceed. Okay, so this is using the VLOOKUP function. Most of us know how to use VLOOKUP function. That's what most people, probably learned first. And in some quarters, once you can use VLOOKUP, you are already seen as an expert. But that's a conversation for another day. But that's what happens, really. Okay, so what I want to do here now is show us that we typically say that, oh, okay, the VLOOKUP function doesn't look to the left. And that used to be one of the biggest drawbacks for the VLOOKUP function, because you always can look up, maybe the country and return the capital, the ISO code, and the currency. But you really cannot say, look up the currency and then return, the country. That didn't used to happen. But I want to show you, which is an old trick, how to use two lookup functions to make that happen. So the two functions I'm using here are VLOOKUP and the choose function, okay? So now let's look at the choose function first of all, maybe in a simple form, just to have an idea, what it does. It's simple. It could be an alternative for like your if. It could also work in place of maybe an index. Okay, so let me show you a simple example so it's clear to everybody. So if you do choose and you put an index number 2, what you do now is you supply it with a couple of as in values, right? So when you say 2 here, you're trying to say that from the values I'm supplying, I want you to give me the second one, okay? So if, for example, I use, maybe I put Oakley as 1, I put Faraz as, the second, and I put, that's a full stop, sorry. And I put Norman as the third, and then I close this, okay? So you can see that it gives me Faraz. That's because I said, 2. If I make this 3, it's going to give me what? Norman, okay? So now that's how the choose function works in its simplest form, right? So how do we use the choose function with VLOOKUP to do a VLOOKUP to the left? So just look at the data I have here. So I have a list of countries, capitals, the more or less like the abbreviation for the countries and then their currencies. So what I've done in this table here is I've listed out a few, ISO codes, and I want to return the country, meaning I'm looking here and I want to return from the back, which is to the left. VLOOKUP is not supposed to be able to do this. That's correct, right? Okay, so let's now see how we're going to use the choose function for that. And this is really good in Office 365 because you get to see what's really going on. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the choose function. Maybe let me do it up here. Let me do it here. So I'm going to do the choose function. And for my index number, rather than just using a number 1 or 2, I will supply it with an array. So I can do it in 2 ways, but let me show you one first. So I can do 1 and 2. What this means is that, as in, I want you to return, the first, and I want you to return the second. So what you do is this. Okay, so you've chosen 1 and 2. Then the first value you choose is, you choose the one to the right. Okay, so I select this whole thing. Then I select the country as my second one. or the capital in this case. Okay, I think I said I wanted to return country. Okay, let me use country. Doesn't really matter. All I want to achieve is I want to look to the left. Okay. So now, if you look at this, you see what's going on here, right? So in doing that, you can see that I said 1 and 2. So 1 is going to be my ISO code, you know, and my country is going to be the second one. So you see it here. So ISO code is in the first column, you know, and country is now in the second column, which is now in the right shape for you to use a VLOOKUP, right? Because for you to use a VLOOKUP, you know, whatever you're looking up must be in the first column. So with the choose, what I've just done with the choose, I've just used the choose to reverse it. So I've used the choose to now say, let the ISO code come first, and then let, you know, the country come second. That's just what I've done. So now that it's reversed, you know, VLOOKUP can easily work, okay? So how do I use the VLOOKUP here? I'm going to use the VLOOKUP in the regular form. I'm going to do VLOOKUP. This is the value I'm looking up, okay? Now for my table array, I've already dealt with that. That table array is what I just showed you, okay? And now, what column am I returning? I'm returning column 2 because my country is now in column 2. Then I do an exact match, okay? And then I take this down, okay? So you see that now I've been able to do a VLOOKUP to the left. So meaning I'm looking at the ISO code, using the ISO code, and then returning, you know, the country or the capital, which is not the way VLOOKUP should work. Everybody says VLOOKUP can only look to the right. But by using a choose, the choose function allows us to reverse, you know, the position of the columns in the index, and that works. So instead of using choose 1 and 2, if you are using like Office 365, you could use a sequence function here, okay? So you use a sequence function, but you're not going to say 2 rows, you're going to say 2 columns, okay? Because if you say 2 rows, then you're going to mix things up. So just put a comma for the rows argument and put 2 here for the you know, columns, and then you still have the same. Okay, so whichever way you want to spin it. So choose with, you can hard code the array literally and say 1, 2, you know, or you can actually use the sequence function and say you want 2 columns. And so I hope you get what I did there, because the choose function, I think this is the important piece. The choose function helps to reverse, you know, the positions of what's it called, the columns in there. So let me paste this here. Okay, so you can see that. So you said choose 1 and 2, but you now choose ISO code as 1 and then country as 2, and then that does the reversal. So that's one way you can use it. But trust me, with XLOOKUP now, you don't need to do this, correct? But I have a few other tabs where I've discussed XLOOKUP. I wanted to just show you this. So if you don't have XLOOKUP and you want to do like a lookup to the left, you can use the choose function and VLOOKUP, and that works, okay? So it's an old trick that if you spent a lot of time on the forums, you know, you would, you get to know. Okay, so let me come into another example, which is going to use the lookup function. I want to put the, sorry, I'm trying to get the chat. Not that I'm really going to look at it, but let me just have it here in case I need to answer any question. But I guess Faraz will be helping me check that.
Yes, Victor, I'll be checking that.
Okay, good. Excellent. Yes, so let me go on. Okay, so now let me show most of the examples I'm going to demonstrate. I'm kind of showing you how you would do them prior to Office 365. And then when I get into XLOOKUP, pretty much I kind of do, you know, the same things using XLOOKUP. But I didn't want to call this an XLOOKUP session rather. So I decided to just coin it differently and say, you know, versatile lookup functions. Okay, so now let's look at this example we have here. So we have a couple of items, right? And, you know, we have some dates. Now for this session, this whole session today, you may see a lot of data that isn't exactly in the right format. You know, you're like, oh, Victor, I think this data can be transformed, you know, into something better. And I agree with you. If you say that, you know, most of these are really for, you know, demonstration purposes. But one thing you realize is that most times data never comes in the way you expect it. And if data always came in the way we expected it, then we'll probably not need Power Query for anything. I think that's the reason why we have Power Query, because, you know, you would always need to transform the data in some form. But here's the data we have, right? So we have, you know, a list of items, and these are like their production values on these days. Okay, so anywhere you see a blank, it means that nothing was produced. So for example, it means that tires, I didn't produce anything between the 1st and, you know, 3rd. I only produced, you know, between the 4th and 7th. So what I want to return here is, I want to return, you know, the last, if you may, whether it's a production or a delivery. So it means for this one, I want to return 24. Okay, for this, I want to return 26. Just giving you an idea here so that you understand what it is we want to do. Okay, we want to return 33. okay, and so on. Right. So prior to, like, say, XLOOKUP, we used to be able to do this using the lookup function. And that's a function I really love so much. I would have loved to spend some time to explain it, but I know if I do that, then I'm probably, not going to do any other thing. I love the function so much, but we take advantage of, a few things. We take advantage of a few things, a few nuances of the lookup function. One good thing about the lookup function, one, is that it ignores errors, right? So if you have an error, in your lookup array, it doesn't really matter. Lookup is going to ignore it, okay? So that's one thing. Then the other thing is that if your lookup value is larger than the largest value you have in your lookup table, it's just going to default to the next value that is just smaller than it. Let me show you what I mean by that. Those two things come in handy. So I'm going to do this example. I'm going to do this example with XLOOKUP, but let me just show you this. Okay, so this is just a simple table that has a couple of names, and their scores. And what I want to do is I want to grade them, okay? So what I mean by the grading, this is what the grading table looks like. It means that if you have any score from 0 to 39, it's an F. This kind of like the grading in my university in Nigeria, it's different in a lot of places. Here in some places, 60 is an F. I don't know how people manage to pass, but so this is the grading we're using here. Anything from 0 to 39 is an F. From 40 to 44 is an E, 45 is a D, and so on. Okay, so now you can solve this using the VLOOKUP, but when you use the VLOOKUP, you're not going to use the exact match, you use approximate match. That can work, right? Because if you use exact match, it's never going to find some values. It's only going to find any value that is in this lookup table. But what you do is you can use approximate match, but I want to show you using the lookup function, just to give you one idea of how it works, okay? So that we will then use this in the next example. But I'll solve all of this with the XLOOKUP. Okay, so now, when you do lookup, for example, so I want to look up and I want to look up this score, 83, right? So I'm looking up 83, and this is where I want to look it up. I want to look it up in these scores here, okay? And when I look it up in these scores, I make that absolute, and I want to return the grade, okay? I make that absolute too, right? So now, you can see in my table that I don't have anything as high as 83. So the way the lookup function works is this. If it tries to find 83 and it can't find 83, it looks for the next value that is just smaller than it, right? And the next value smaller than it here is 70. So it's going to reuse that 70 to return an A. That's kind of how it works. So when you press Control Enter now, you can see you have an A. You take that down, okay? So you can see that for everybody, it gets them correctly. So long as, the range is covered, right? You won't have any problems. Now, let me do something so you see what happens with the lookup when you have an error. If I change this value here to 1 divided by 0, now this is an error. Now the lookup is still working, but it's not doing exactly what I want. But see what's happening. Let's take, for example, 59. The score 59 should actually be a C, right? It should be a C because this value here should have been 50. Okay, so 59 should be a C. But because it's seeing an error here, what lookup is seeing is like lookup is assuming now that this row doesn't exist. So what lookup is seeing is that it's seeing 45 as D, and for it, anything between 46, 45 all the way to 59 is a D. There's no C anymore. So you can see that 59 is giving you a D, But the point is that it's not correct, but it ignores errors, okay? So the fact that it ignores errors is a positive, something we can use to our advantage. Then the fact also that even if the value you have in the table is not as large as the value you're looking for, it can always revert to the largest value in the table. That also becomes an advantage, okay? So we will use those two concepts, to solve the problem I have on the next screen. I just wanted to kind of, show it a little before I move, okay? But there are a few things you need to know about the lookup function. And today is not the day to talk too much about it. The lookup function always needs to have values in ascending order, okay? So imagine I wanted to do something like that, right? How do I know maybe what value to look up here? Somebody may say, oh, maybe you look up a value that is very large, that could help. The problem we have here is that the values are not in ascending order, right? These values are not in ascending order. So that's a big problem. But what I want to do is this. I want to return the last non-blank value. So let me start the way I would normally start my functions. I will first of all do this. I'll take this range and I'll test if this range is not blank. Okay, you know what that's going to give me, right? It's going to give me a bunch of true and false. So everywhere it is not blank, it's going to be true. Everywhere is blank, it's going to be false. So let's do that. Okay, so do you see that? You can see that this looks like it's in ascending order, right? Because you see false, 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 then trues. So this looks like, oh, this makes sense. This can work. But that's not the story everywhere, right? Because if you do that same thing, maybe here, let's do that same thing here. Sorry, let's just take this one. okay, and do not blank. So let's do the same thing here and see whether we have it in ascending order. You can see that this is not in ascending order. You have what? False, you have true, you have false. So your lookup is not likely going to work, right? So what you have to do is you have to find a way, to put things in ascending order. I'll tell you the answer because I already know. So what I'm going to do here is this. I will do 1 divided by this value here. So I'll do 1 divided by, whatever I have in here. Don't forget that I had false and true. False essentially will be 0, true will be 1. But when you do 1 over 0 from O-level mathematics, you know that gives you an error, right? In maths, they used to tell us then it gives us infinity, which is a large number that cannot be, as in described, finite. So now let me do this and show you what's going to come up. So now, do you see what's happening? Everywhere that is blank, right, it's going to be an error, okay? But in every other, you see that it's going to follow sequentially. 1, 1, 1 is actually in ascending order. Whether you say the values are the same, but yes, so long as you don't have it descending, then you're fine. You can see that, so you have an error, but you have 1, 1, 1 in between there. The good thing is that the lookup function is going to ignore the errors. So for the fact that the lookup function ignores the errors, it's more or less as if these values are not there. The only thing it's seeing is 1, 1, 1. So this is a trick to kind of set this in a pseudo ascending order. Once you have this value now, right, you know that the highest value you can have in here is 1 because you are dividing 1 by true and 1 by false. You won't have any value larger than 1. So what you now do is this. You can now pull up your lookup function. You pull up your lookup function. For you to get the last value, you just need to pick a value that is larger than the largest value in your array. You know that the largest value in your array is 1. So you can put any value larger than 1. On forums, most times you see 2, but you can always use a value even as small as this, 1.001, okay? So then it means look for 1.001 within this array. This array will not find, it won't find 1.001. So what it will do is that it will default to the last value it sees. And the last value it sees here is this 1, which corresponds to the last non-blank. So, well, let me finish it then, you see. So you look up 1.001 within this complex array and you return the same thing. Okay, just watch it. Okay. And then you do this. And then you take this up. Okay. And now you have your answer. You have 24 here. You have 26 here. You have 33, 22, and it works. Now, somebody's like, okay, Victor, I'm not really sure what you did there. So there are 3 things you need to note, and I'll just take that and I'll move on because I think with the XLOOKUP, it's easier now, so you may not want to sweat it. But if you don't have the XLOOKUP function, this is one way you can get it, to work. Okay. So what I want you to note are 3 things. 1, the lookup function ignores errors. Okay. So it assumes they're not there. Lookup function requires that your values are arranged in ascending order. If the values are equal, that's fine. Then the 3rd thing is this. If lookup cannot find the value you're looking for, right? If you pick a value that is larger than the largest value in the array, then what lookup does is that it takes the last value that you have in that array. So what it means is that if I look for 1.001, because it can't find it, it just looks like, okay, what is the last one I can see? That's the rightmost one. And the rightmost one, of course, will correspond to wherever you have a non-blank cell, okay? Because if you use a regular VLOOKUP will always find the first match. So VLOOKUP will find this, VLOOKUP will find this, VLOOKUP will find this. But now this is kind of like looking up, from, the right, which XLOOKUP can handle, very easily. Okay, so I hope this wasn't too complex. Okay, I've seen somebody saying the first time division by 0 looks like a good thing. Yes, errors are not always bad. Faraz, thank you. Okay, so good. So now let's get into, some XLOOKUP. But my focus on the XLOOKUP is not really, just the XLOOKUP in its normal sense, but XLOOKUP in a different, sense of it. And I talked about this a little at the London Excel Meetup. Even though it was in passing, that wasn't the focus. But, I felt, okay, well, why not bring it here and, talk about it a little more explicitly. So this is the first point I want you to note here on this. Most of us believe that XLOOKUP returns a value, but okay, I'm making the point here that XLOOKUP returns a reference or a range. Okay, the index function also returns a range. The index function doesn't return a value. The index function returns a range, but depending on where you use the index function, it could return a value. I think that's the point, and I'll prove it to you. Okay, so now let me, so from here onwards, it's XLOOKUP, then I would go into another example, which is the choose function, and then I think I will call it whichever one, a day or a night. So, but the XLOOKUP are quite interesting. But I'm focusing more on, not just XLOOKUP, but just that XLOOKUP works with a range. That's my first focus. So now let's do something. Just look at this data here, just so that we understand it. So we have, a list of fictitious salesmen, So we have a date, we have a salesperson, we have the items they sold, and we have the amount. Okay. So let's assume I want to return, maybe the amount for Michael Jai White. For those of us that watch movies, we probably will know Michael Jai White, some karate guy like that, or martial arts. Okay, so whatever happens when I return Michael Jai White, this is what I expect you to return. I want you to return 80. So which is like a regular VLOOKUP. You can use a VLOOKUP for that. Look up Jai White in salesperson and return amount. So let's use XLOOKUP in this case. So we use XLOOKUP. This is what I'm looking up. I'm looking up Michael Jai White, right? And now I'm looking it up where? In the salesperson's column, okay? And then I want to return what? The amount. That's all. Simple. Look for Michael Jai White in the salesperson, return amount. That's all. Okay. Now you see you get the right answer, 80. Right? So this is 80. Okay, good. So for you now, seeing this, you're like, oh, XLOOKUP returns a value. That's what it does. But now, let me show you something. If you use this function, many of us have used the row function or the column function. The row function would take a reference and tell you the row that reference is on. So for example, if I say a row of Z100, what's this going to give me? It's going to tell me 100, meaning that, Z100 is on row 100, right? Good. If I change this to what? Column, it's going to tell me the column where Z100 is on, which is going to be 26. Okay? Because Z is 26 counting from A. Now, if you then change this Z100 to like a name, like Faraz, for example, even though that's a nice name, right? It doesn't work because it's not a reference, right? It needs a reference. So now let's go to this XLOOKUP and see. The XLOOKUP is showing us the value 80. I'm going to put a row function in front of this. So put a row function in front of this and do enter. Do you see that the row function works on the XLOOKUP and gives you 13? And how does it give you 13? Michael Jai White. Let's look at Michael Jai White. Where is he? Michael Jai White is here. What row are we on? We're on row 13. Do you see that? So you can see that it actually returns, a reference, but because you used equals to XLOOKUP, then it gives you a value. But if you use it in a function that can accept it as a reference, it takes it as a reference. If you change this to column, you can guess what the answer is going to be. It's going to tell you the column where that 80 is, and that 80 is in column D. Or is that E for me? That's E rather. So it should give you 5. Okay, so it gives you 5. Right? Okay, so now you see that this tells you that XLOOKUP actually returns what? A reference. So once you know that XLOOKUP returns a reference, you can then use it in the regular way you would use, references. So that leads me to the next example here. So what do I want to do in this example? What I want to do is this. I want to sum up all the amounts from the top to wherever it finds Bruce Lee. Okay, so let me do it manually first. So what's the answer here? The answer is 1,000. You can see that here, 1,000. Okay, so but what I want to do is, I have the name here. I want it to be dynamic in such a way that if I put a name here, what it will do is that it will run all the way from the top and, sum up the amounts all till it gets to that name. Okay, so how am I going to do that? I'm going to use the sum function, right? I'll use the sum function. Where am I starting from? I'm obviously starting from here. Now, I will then put a colon and then put an XLOOKUP. The XLOOKUP will find me where Bruce Lee is, right? Return the amount for Bruce Lee, and it's going to sum it up. Why does this work? This works because the XLOOKUP actually is not returning, a value, but a reference, because this should not work, right? You can't say E5 to XLOOKUP of something, but XLOOKUP returns a reference. So let's do this. So you do XLOOKUP, and we look up Bruce Lee, and where we look it up? We look it up in salesperson, right? And what do we return? We return what? The amount, correct? So we close the bracket. So this XLOOKUP here is actually returning a range. Then I close the bracket again. What's the answer we're expecting? 1,000. You see that? So we are using XLOOKUP now, not, like just to find a value, but we're using it in a sum function as if the XLOOKUP were a reference. If you want to actually see that, you can go into evaluate formulas. Let's see Alt MV. Let's kind of evaluate this and see what happens. Just follow it through. You can see the XLOOKUP is looking for G7. Let me evaluate. G7 evaluates to Bruce Lee. That's correct. That's what we're trying to do, right? Then you evaluate. Okay, so this is the lookup array. Now this is the return array. Now when you do evaluate last time, do you see what it does? It returns what? E12. Okay, so the XLOOKUP is actually returning a reference. And once it returns E12, it can then use it in the sum function. And that works like magic. Okay, so now that's one example. So let me do a second example. Now, the second example is similar, just using the same concept, but making it a little more interesting. So now I have the name Bruce Lee here. I have the name Steven Seagal. I want to be able to just choose two names and be able to do a sum from the first name to the second name. I'm dealing here with just the first instances of these names. Okay, so now how am I going to do that? The beautiful thing about the sum function is that sum function doesn't care even if your range is in the reverse. See what I mean? If you say sum E14 to E5, it's the same thing as doing E5 to E14, right? Okay, so it doesn't really matter. So long as it finds, Bruce Lee and it finds Steven Seagal, it's going to sum up between them. So let's look at the answer manually and see what it's going to be. So Steven Seagal will be found first, and then all the way to Bruce Lee. This answer should be 630. Okay, so let's see how we do that. So I want to sum up in between when you find this name and this name. I just put some drop downs here so that when I change the names, the sum function would also update. So I'm going to do sum, and then for the first value, I'm going to do XLOOKUP. So I'm going to do an XLOOKUP of Bruce Lee. I'm going to look up Bruce Lee in salesperson, and I'm going to return what is amount. Okay, so this is my first, cell reference. Okay, I close that. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to put a colon. It just looks very funny. Like, how do you do XLOOKUP colon? Doesn't look like what you should do. Well, I apologize, but it's what it is. So you now have XLOOKUP. We look up the second person, Steven Seagal, and we look him up in salesperson, and we return what? Amount. So essentially, this is going to find two references, right? So that's what it's going to be. Okay, close the bracket for the XLOOKUP. I think one more bracket. I hope I got that right. Okay, and you see 630, which we got manually by doing Steven Seagal to Bruce Lee. Okay, and if you change the names here, maybe Chuck Norris to Steven Seagal. Let's see that. Chuck Norris to Steven Seagal, yeah, 440. Okay, so we are taking advantage of the fact that XLOOKUP returns a reference, to make that happen. Okay, so that's one example of you using XLOOKUP in the sense of it returning a range and a reference and using it to your advantage. So you can use XLOOKUP in a sum function. You can also do the same thing with an index function too, right? Because the index, and the XLOOKUP, they both return references or ranges. If you read the documentation on support.microsoft.com, you'll see that. Okay, so now let me go into another example. Faraz, if at any point you need to stop me, just stop. Or if you have a question, I'm free to take it at this point and then before I go in. So I'm flexible. I don't want to wait till the end. Maybe the person could just ask while it's fresh. Okay, so
there is no comment, Victor, but there is one message, in a chat from one of our lovely friend, Oz. Oz is here. Oz. God told me to get. Oz says, God told me to get out of the bed. Victor Momoh is doing something important.
Oz, you're welcome. Nice to have you here. I guess we'll get to the banters after the session.
Yes. Nothing
Okay,
is
so now, so the named ranges, oh, sorry. You can see I use Power Automate too, right? So in case I had denied ever using it, my secret has been exposed. Okay, so now, because XLOOKUP returns a reference, you can use it in creating, dynamic ranges. Now, somebody is going to argue and say that why do you need to create a dynamic range? Because tables are dynamic in themselves. So, once you have an Excel table, you really don't need, to create dynamic ranges like we used to do. But then again, you must also remember that sometimes your range doesn't necessarily go from top to bottom. Your range could be going from left to right, which could get a little tricky, sometimes in tables. So there's still a case for it, and well, I think the Excel world is divided when it comes to Excel table. Some people are like, always use it. Some people are like, okay, use it sometimes. Some of us are like, okay, look at the situation and know when to use it. But I want to show you that you can create, like a dynamic range, with XLOOKUP. What I mean by dynamic range is that this range is going from here all the way to the last row here. I want it in such a way that if I add new data or, take out some, the range expands and reduces accordingly. The only reason this works is because XLOOKUP returns a range, so I can use it to my advantage. So now, how do I get, the first thing I need to get is this. I need to get, the last non-blank cell. That's what I need, okay? So I need the last non-blank cell. So how do I get the last non-blank cell? I can do it in maybe more than 2 ways, but let me show you maybe 1 or 2. Okay, so now, there was one I think I did during the what's it called? London Meetup. So now I could use something like, maybe say, oh, okay, it's not blank, and I could use a true. So for example, I could say, I'm looking for a true, right? And then what's my lookup array? I'm just checking. Maybe I want to run all the way. I'm just doing this for demonstration. I could do this, right? And I could say this is not blank, okay? So this is not blank is going to give me true, false, true, false. I always like to use F9 to evaluate, so that people kind of see what's going on in there, okay? So you can see inside there, everywhere it's not blank is a true, right? Then everywhere it's blank, is a false, okay? All right, so that's that. So now you can see that all these values will give me true, right? All of them. But what I'm interested in is in the last true. The last true is obviously where the range ends. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. I've looked up true in this, array. My return array, I'm going to return exactly the same thing. I'm just doing this. I don't want to go all the way A to A for now, or B to B. Okay, now the only thing you need to take advantage of here in the XLOOKUP is the fact that XLOOKUP can look up from last to first, right? Which is like saying from end to beginning. So you put a comma to skip it is not found, then the match mode, I'm skipping that. Then the search mode is the important thing. You can see search from last to first, okay? So by doing search from last to first, it's going to find the last, non-blank value. So I'm going to do -1 here, close the bracket, okay? And you can see that it finds, 31. Okay, everybody see that, right? So that's one way you can get it done. The other way you could do it is you could also use a wildcard. You can say that because everywhere here where there's a value, wildcard would return nothing. So you could also kind of use a wildcard. But that one is a little tricky because the wildcard only works, it's going to return the last text you have in there. It's not going to work for numbers. So let me show you that. But this is the idea here. You do XLOOKUP, lookup value, you just do, that. Lookup array, you kind of look up in the same range. Let's just say you go all the way down here, right? Return array, you kind of return the same thing, okay? And then you skip all this and you do, you don't skip all that. You do wildcard here. Yes, you do, you do wildcard, okay? Yeah, you do wildcard and you say you're searching from end to beginning, okay? So that's kind of this. All right, let's see. Okay, so it doesn't work. But if I put a text here, you see it. So you can see that for this one, it kind of works either way, but for this, it only returns, the last position of a text, but that's not what you need. You want it to work either way, whether you have text or you have numbers. So what you technically just need to do is just to convert that range, instead of having the range just in that raw state, you can just deceive Excel and make Excel think it's a text, So I could do something like this here. I could just put a text function, around the range, and then maybe just use the @ symbol, which is kind of like say, well, give it to me as is, just to trick Excel into thinking I'm giving it text, okay? And so let me see, where's that now? Okay, yes. So it's giving me 0 based on, this range. This is the last value I put here. So let me see, 12. Okay, that works. So that's kind of how you do it. So you could do it either way. You could use, true, and if it's not blank, you could also use a wildcard. But the wildcard is a little tricky. But now that's not the point. So now that you have the XLOOKUP, and you have an XLOOKUP that gives you, the last, cell in your range, you can use it in a dynamic named range. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create a dynamic range. A dynamic range is going to run from B3 all the way to the last, non-empty cell that you have there. So let me do Control F3. I'm going to create a new name. I'm just going to call this dynamic range XL. Okay, so where am I going to start from? So I'm going to start from this cell, B4. I put a colon, and then I paste my XLOOKUP. You see that? So I'm going to say B4 to XLOOKUP. So even though you are seeing XLOOKUP returning the value 12, XLOOKUP is actually returning the reference, whatever cell address this is, okay? And that should be that. Let's see, okay. All right. So that's our dynamic named range. Okay, so I think I call this what? Dyne range Excel, okay? So let's see though. It stops at 12. If I delete these values, it stops at Faraz. If I delete these values, see? So the range is actually responding. You can see that the range is dynamic. As this changes, expands or contracts, my range also expands or contracts. So that could be useful, instead of looking at, a whole column or a whole row. you just have a dynamic range that focuses on, the data that you actually have. Okay, so that's XLOOKUP being used for a dynamic range, and that's taking advantage of, the fact that, XLOOKUP returns a reference. Okay, so now let me do another example. Same, but this one here is a little interesting, in the sense that this is what we can do with index and match, but we are going to do it using, XLOOKUP, but kind of using a double XLOOKUP. But I'll try to explain it, and if it's not clear, it's a little messy. Oh, okay. Someone is like, I think I need to restart Zoom. So Faraz, do you want to do that, or? Okay.
Yes,
Hello, Faraz.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. Oh, you want to restart Zoom? Or
No.
Oh, okay.
You can carry
all
on.
right. Okay, all right. I get, sorry. I just yeah, and it can be interesting. Sometimes I talk so long and I don't realize if I'm talking to myself, I'm talking to people. But from the comments, I see that people are still here. So that's good to know. I haven't been left alone. And we haven't needed to deploy the ambulance too. Ours is still fine. So that's good. Okay, so now let's look at this example. So what I want to be able to do is this. I have a large table here where I have a couple of IDs. I have, names, location, age, and I have a small table here where, maybe my manager has extracted a few IDs for me. The manager wants me to return, maybe the name. But now this is what we've done here. We've tried to make things very compact. So in here, we've put name. We just put a drop down, name, location, and age, right? Okay, so what we want to be able to do is that depending on what I select here, whether I select age or select location or name, that's what I want to return in here, okay? So I don't just want to say, oh, hard code it and return just location. I want it to be dynamic in such a way that it's able to respond, to to whatever column I have here. So now, let me show you how I'm going to do this. This is going to be interesting, but I think with dynamic arrays, you really get to see what's going on because of the fact that it spills. So when it spills, you kind of see, oh, okay, this is what's, inside of this. So it makes it easier for you to kind of construct your formulas. So let's start with an XLOOKUP. We start with an XLOOKUP. I'm looking up this value. Don't forget, that's the first thing, right? Now, where do I want to look it up? I want to look it up here in my IDs, okay? This is not a table. So yeah, for this one, I'm just going to use a regular range, okay? Now, what do I want to return? I can decide in this case, because I know it could either be name, location, or age, right? It could be the three of them. So what I want to do is that I want you to return the three. So instead of just saying return, find the ID and return the name, for example, or return the location, I would say return name, location, and age. This is the advantage of having dynamic arrays. Okay, I'm going to lock this, close the bracket now. Let me see this. So do you see what it does? Okay, so it's giving you the name, it's giving you the location, it's giving you the age, the three of them. But what you need really is just what's the age. So think about it this way. So let's say, let me put it here. I want to put it somewhere so where you can see it clearly. Let me put it here. Put it here and kind of overlay the header on it. Okay. Now, do you see this? You can see that if you've gotten to this point, what do you need to do now? You just need another XLOOKUP, where the XLOOKUP can look up either name and return whatever is under the name, or where XLOOKUP can look up location, return this, where age can look up this, XLOOKUP can look up age and return this. Okay, so because you can see it spill, it kind of makes it easier for you to follow what's going on. So I did one XLOOKUP first, I returned the three of them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm now going to do another XLOOKUP, okay? So like a nested XLOOKUP. So I'm going to do XLOOKUP and I'm going to look up this age. So it's like saying look up age, right? Within these three cells, okay? So once it returns, any of them, maybe 1, 2, or 3, that would determine, which of these is going to show, whether it's going to show the name, it's going to show the location, or it's going to show the name. So I'm going to lock this. Okay, I'm going to put a comma, and then I'm going to close this. I hope you followed what I did. I did a first XLOOKUP. The first XLOOKUP kind of just gave me these 3, right? So if you kind of look at it and kind of put the headers over it, you see that what you just need to do is that if you look up the column name, it can easily return the value. So that's what I did here. I'm looking up whatever is here as age, looking it up here, and it will return the value. So let's close the bracket and get good. Okay, so let's see here. Sorry, did that long way. Okay, so those are the ages. Now you can see that if I do this and change this to name, it gives me the names. If I do this and change it to location, it gives me the location. So I'm actually using, just one cell. So rather than having location, age, and name, I'm using one cell, and I'm incorporating, XLOOKUP to check, the location of, that, well, this would be like tautology, the location of that location. So the location of that column, and based on that, it's able to return this. So this is one of those cases where you kind of use, like a double, XLOOKUP. Okay, so that's one. And I can go into, evaluate formulas to kind of show you why it's working the way it works, that it's actually returning ranges, and not actually, values. But I think you kind of get the point from the first example I did. Okay, so now let me pull up a slightly more complex example. This example was posted recently on, I think, Microsoft Excel Help. It's a group on LinkedIn. I think Peter Bartholomew is the one who runs, the group. Oh, I see Grania, my good friend. Hi, Grania. So it was just an example, but I kind of just remodeled it to use fictitious data, to kind of demonstrate this. So here's the example, and it's just one of those cases too where XLOOKUP becomes, very handy. Now, this is what's going on here. You have this data where you have, maybe years, you have, teams, and then you have a couple of metrics, okay? Now, somebody wants to be able to select, a year, select a team, select a metric, and have an output. It could work in the simplest case, which was like one we showed before. You could use an index match, but this one gets a little more complex, but you can always find a way around it. But I'll show you how to do it with the XLOOKUP. So what I want to be able to do is, I want to be able to find 2015, team B and, metric 2, okay? I've solved this also with the sum product, but because today we are not talking about sum products, I will probably just, default to XLOOKUP. Okay, so let me do XLOOKUP here for this. So watch this. Don't forget what we want to check. The thing is, the year must be 2015 and the team must be B. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to do XLOOKUP first of all. So for my lookup value, I'm going to do a concatenation because I need it to satisfy both conditions, both the year and the team, right? So I'm going to say this, concatenate it with what? With B. So it means that this will always give me something like 2015 B, right? Together. Now, where do I look this up? I will do the same concatenation too. So I'm going to concatenate, the year and the team in my lookup. So I'm going to do this, press F4. I'm going to concatenate it with what? The team, okay? Watch this. Okay, so you see that it has to be like for like. Because you've concatenated 2015 and B, you have to also concatenate where you're looking it up, okay? And now, what am I going to return? I want to return, I don't know the metric the person is going to choose. The person may choose metric 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do like the same thing. I'm going to return, the 4 metrics. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to return the 4. I'm going to close the bracket. Now, do you see what it's done? So let's go to the table and see this. This is 2015B. You see it's returned for you 88, 60, 75, 56. Those are the 4 values here. Okay? So, but now that you have this, it's simple too. It's kind of the same logic. If you overlay this metric on top of this, let me just use the values. If you kind of overlay it, you can easily use an XLOOKUP here to say, if I'm looking at metric 2, return 80. If I'm looking at metric 4, return 56. I'm kind of showing or X-raying it so that you kind of see what's really going on. But the moment you get the hang of it, it becomes piece of cake. Okay, so now we've done one XLOOKUP and the XLOOKUP has returned for us the values we need. We just need to have another XLOOKUP, that would give us the metric. So I'm going to put another XLOOKUP, right? And then I'm going to say whatever metric the person selects here, okay? Look it up within, these headers here, okay? Once you look it up, you already have what to return. Whatever you return here are the values. So it's going to look, is it metric 2 to pick the second one? Is it metric 4 to pick the fourth one? Okay, so I just close this bracket here and I have 60. So let's see if that's correct. 2015 B and metric 2, that's 60. So let's change it to something else just to be sure I didn't have code something here. They say Victor is cheating. So 2017, let me do D and let me do metric 4. Okay, it says 89. Let's see if that's correct. 2017 D, right? And then metric 4 is what? 89. Okay, so you see that. So the XLOOKUP is really, really powerful in this sense, in the sense that because of that range and reference that it returns, once you kind of figure how it works, you know how to kind of nest your XLOOKUPs, to get to, to get to what it is you want to achieve. So this is just a slightly, more complex example. And I hope I haven't lost, I won't say anyone, I will say everyone. I'm sure I will have some people that are still with me. Okay, so, all right. So let me show you one other thing, and this is kind of like data I used to receive back, in one of my former employments. And it's kind of messy. So I'm going to delete this column, just so that we see what it is we want to do. Okay, good. So I will just explain the data. The data is fictitious. Let me just put that out first. I always try to create fictitious data so people don't, read too much. But some of it is correct, though. It says it's a list of cities in some US states. Okay, right, and it just returns their population, their latitude, longitude. You can get a lot of this using the new data types in Excel, geography data type, right? Most of us should know that. Okay, so geography.
Hey, Victor.
Yes.
Fun fact, but this is actually where I'm from.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Are you serious? So I never knew. I just picked the list of, I picked like the first maybe 6 or 7 states alphabetically. I picked them, their cities, and yeah. So it's good to know. So at least you can relate with the data then.
Yeah.
Good. So, well, it looks like you guys are not a lot in Alexander City. 14, thousands. Okay,
not
so
that
good.
one specifically, just the state.
Oh, okay, you're from Alabama is what you meant. Okay, yeah. Okay, the state, okay, not the city. But I'm sure your city is somewhere there. The capital is Birmingham, right? Birmingham, Alabama.
No, it's actually Montgomery.
Oh, is it not Montgomery?
Yeah.
It's always been. My geography is now bad. I take that back. It's Montgomery. I used to know these things, but as you grow older, you tend to forget. Okay, so let me explain what I want to do in this one and just show you why I brought this up, because I used to face this real life, right? It's not just me trying to create fictitious data. Okay, so now look at this data. You can see that all these cities belong to Alabama, but there's no way to know. This column here, this state column you're seeing here doesn't exist. I put this just for you to see what we are trying to achieve. It doesn't exist. So see what happens. You can see the state is here. You see this state is here, Alabama, and then it will list all the cities in that state. When it gets to, sorry, let me go back to the top. Sorry about that. So you see it's Alabama. Let me scroll instead. Okay. So when it gets here, you'll see there's a state, Alaska. Then it will list all the cities. So what it means that every city here belongs to Alaska. If you scroll down again, you'll see Arizona here. So it means every city here, what's it called, belongs to Arizona. So that's kind of how it is. So you see that. So if you see here, California, and then all the cities here belong to California. But you don't have this column here. This column doesn't exist. So this is the column I want to create. Okay, so I want to create this column, and how am I able to get that? Oh, Alexander City belongs to Alabama, Anniston belongs to Alabama. I'm thinking the Birmingham, Alabama thing is something that has to do with Martin Luther King in my head, just thinking, but yeah. I was just thinking about it. Okay, so let's see how we're going to do this. So we are going to use a wildcard with XLOOKUP. And this is what I'm going to do. So for all these cities, it means I want to look backwards. And the first word I see here that starts with state, that's the state I'm interested in. What it means is that if I'm here, I start looking from wherever I am here. I start looking to the top, looking at all the rows before me. Wherever I find, any cell that has the word state in there, that's the state I'm interested in, and that will bring out the value for me. Okay, so it means that if I'm here, let me just give you another example so you kind of follow. If I'm here, it means start looking at each of the rows above me till you find a row where here you see the word state. So state is going to be what I'm going to use with my wildcard. Okay, but I'm going to be looking backwards. So that way I can return the state. I used to need to do this, but not with states. This is more with, engineering data, but I just created this, just to pass the same message across. So what we want to do is we want to return the states for each of these. So now we're going to do XLOOKUP. I hope you follow this. Our lookup value is, we know that wherever the state is, the word state appears there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do something like this. I'm just going to say, maybe look for state, something like this, with an asterisk. Meaning that, because I don't know, it could be state Alabama, state Arizona, state, Connecticut, it could be anything. But I know it has a state, a colon, and, I'll put an asterisk to wildcard to say, you know, I'm not really sure what it is. So now, where am I going to be looking it up? My lookup array. What I want to do is that from wherever I am, I want to start looking, you know, from the top to stop at the cell where I am. Okay. So it means that I'm going to lock this. Watch this. Okay. No, sorry about that. I should be looking up in, sorry. Give me a second. Let me fix that. I should be looking up in column B. Okay, so I'm looking up from the first row till the row where I am. In fact, really, it should actually be to the row before me because I know I won't see it on the row where I am, really. So it's more like, you know, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use mixed references here. Okay, so it's like saying, you know, from wherever you are, look at every row above me. Okay, right? And then check if you can find the word state in there. Right. So now if you, so that's the lookup array. And then what is the return array? I'm just going to repeat the same thing for the return array. Okay, now that's not the interesting part. If it's not found, this is like your if error. You don't need this. The next thing you need is the match mode. I want to do a wildcard character match because I don't know what the full text will be, but I know it has state in there. So I do 2 for my wildcard. Then the important thing here is I'm going to search from what? Last to first. So meaning that from where I am, I'm going to be searching backwards. So the first one I see, obviously, is the state I'm interested in. You get that? So I'm looking from where I am, and I'm looking to the rows above me. So the first, you know, state I see, the first cell I see that has the word state, that's what I'm interested in. So that's what I want it to return. So I'm going to do -1 here, okay? And then I do enter. And you see that. Now, let's take this down, and let's go to some other state down there. Let's see if we are correct. So look at this now. You see this one? Because when you look at what's going on here, you see what it's doing. It's looking up from the beginning to here. It's looking up backwards. So as it's looking, it's starting from this row where it is on. It looks to the next, it looks to the next, looks to the next. Once it finds state, it picks that value. And you can see that's why it picked Alaska correctly. So this way, you know, even though I have a lot of, you know, breaks in my data, everybody's picking the right, you know, state. Okay, so this is taking advantage of using a wildcard and using a lookup from, you know, the end. So once you have this in this case, you know, to get the actual state, you could use maybe a substitute function. You know, you just use a substitute function and say substitute, you know, in this cell that I have here, anywhere you see state with a column and a space, replace it with nothing. So you're left with just, you know, the state, okay? And you do this. And then you have it run all the way, okay? And you see that. Okay, so I hope you got this one. So it's kind of an interesting one, right? So you're looking, using a wildcard and also looking in the reverse. Okay, so the idea here, just select the cell so you kind of see what it's doing. So it's checking from here, but it's not looking from top to bottom, it's looking from bottom to top. And the first place it sees a state, a word with a cell with the word state, it picks that. So the substitute is just to get rid of the state column, and you know that's that. Okay, some of these problems may look like, you know, maybe they are more suited to, you know, maybe Power Query. So also I may give this to you, you know, maybe you could use it for one of your, what's it called, your weekend exercises. And, you know, we could do this with Power Query. But this is how, you know, I'll do it with XLOOKUP. And of course, this session is about lookup functions. So I shouldn't be doing Power Query, right? Okay, good. So, okay, so that's that. Okay, then let me just show you this one. This one is just XLOOKUP, you know, doing an approximate match. I already did this with the lookup function at the beginning, but I'm going to do this. Okay, so and now I need to speed up. Yes, I'm looking at my time. So let me do this. XLOOKUP. Let me explain the problem. Sorry, I went ahead of myself. It's the same problem. You have a range here, a table, and you have, you know, the grades. What I've done here is I've kind of mutilated the data. This 0F should actually come before 40E. But you know that XLOOKUP is not limited by, you know, the data needs to be sorted in ascending order. That used to be a limitation for VLOOKUP and lookup. This data has to be in ascending order. So you need to kind of do Alt ASA, you know, make it, then XLOOKUP works. But now I'm like, no, you don't need to do that, right? So you could just mess it up. So put here, let's bring 50C here, and let's bring 0F here. Okay, XLOOKUP would still work. And XLOOKUP just, the approximate match is very simple. So it means that XLOOKUP internally sorts the data, and then it looks for the value that is just smaller than the value you're looking up, and it finds it. So let me do the XLOOKUP for you to see. So XLOOKUP, pick this value, test score. Then, you know, you select this, lock that. Then your return array, you're returning the grade, lock that. Now, if not found, leave that. match mode. So you can say no more exact match, but exact match on next smaller item, right? Because the idea here is that if I have 65, 65 should default to 60, which is B, because it's going backwards, okay? You're not rounding the scores up, you're taking it to the bottom. So exact match on next smaller item. So that's what I'm going to choose here, which is -1, okay? And then I close the bracket, right? So you see that 39 is F, but if you use a lookup for this, it's not going to work. This table needs to be sorted in ascending order. Once you have this, you can take this down, you know, and you have all your grades. So you could also use it sometimes for like maybe where you have discount based on maybe amount bought, you know, things like that. If somebody buys up to 10,000, 5% discount. If he buys up to 20,000, 10% discount. So you could set up a small table like this. You can use an XLOOKUP. It will look at the amount, you know, find it within this table, and then it will return, you know, the discount for you. So most times I like to use simple examples where when I say simple now, simple in terms of the context, I don't want to use discipline-specific examples so that you can relate with it, and then, you know, how you use it really is up to you. You know, it's your creativity that matters. Once you get the concept, you know, you can use it, you know, anyhow, you know, you want. Okay, so let me move. I'm almost getting to, yeah, where I would call it a day. Yeah. I moved way faster than I think I've learned to move faster these days. Okay, so, but anyway, there'll be time for questions. So at that point, I think, you know, we'll take all of that. Yes. Okay, so let me show you what I want to do in this one. So I also made the argument, right, that, you know, even the filter function, I consider the filter function to be like a lookup function. Because if I say filter, you know, maybe on a particular name, it's more like, you know, going from row to row till you find the row you're interested in, right? Which is what the lookup function will do. If you say look up this value, lookup is going to go from top to bottom, you know, and then, you know, start finding, you know, oh, is it equal to the value I'm looking for? Is it not? And so on. So the filter too can work in, you know, in that context. So I want to just show you a little on the filter function, a little, not a lot, but not filter, just filter in the way I like to use it. Okay, so let me explain this example. For those of us who like football, you know, we would know some of these players, okay? So what I want to do is this. I want to show the cities that, you know, these guys have visited. So for example, Cristiano Ronaldo, let me filter. Just do Cristiano Ronaldo. Okay, so I want to see Paris, London, Abuja, and Los Angeles, okay? And I want them maybe concatenated into one cell with a comma, Paris, comma, London, Abuja, Los Angeles. Yeah, if I were trying to send people to the ER, you know, I will use filter XML, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to do a simple thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the filter function. And I'm going to, the filter function, you know, why I'm bringing up the filter function is this. The filter function can allow you to do like returning multiple values. You know, in all my examples, XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, you pretty much just return one value, right? You know, you just look for either the first match, the last one, you know, but here you can return multiple. So let's use filter. So I'll say filter. I want to see these cities. These are the cities. This is what I want to return, okay? So I filter on the cities, yeah. Now, the include, this is my criteria. What criteria do I want to use to determine whether I include it or I don't include it? My criteria is simple. I want if the name is equal to the name here. So what it means is that if the name is equal to Cristiano Ronaldo, then pick the city for me. You get it? Let me allow it spill so that you see what it gives us. Okay, so you see it. It's simple. Right? It's simple enough. I'm only showing this as like if you're doing like a multiple lookup, you know, this is kind of what you will do, multiple values, you know, because if you say you want to use XLOOKUP will either return Paris or return Los Angeles. It could be tricky to kind of return, you know, the ones in between, but I can show you how to do that. So once you have this, but I want them to be in one cell, you know, so I'm just going to use a text join. So I'm going to do text join, and I'm going to join it with a comma. This doesn't matter to me at this point, but I can put a true. You know, so what this is just saying is that all the values you have in there, concatenate them, you know, using a comma, okay? And that's that, and this is this, okay? So now, this is, you know, pretty much it, right? So this is kind of being like a multiple lookup because you're looking at Cristiano Ronaldo and it appears multiple times, and you want to see all of them together in one place. So you could have used the if function too with the text join, but again, like I say, I'm using the examples that relate to my topic, which is, you know, lookup functions, and that's why I'm doing that. So this is one way you can use it. Filter and text join for multiple lookups or returning multiple values, and then the text join is just the glue to bring them together, okay? So this is a simple example. Now, let me do a similar example, right? But add a twist to it. Okay, so here I'm going to use two lookup functions, the filter and the index function. Okay, yeah. All right, so now let's look at the names here. The names appear multiple times. These are simple examples because I don't want to complicate it with the example. Doing it sometimes is complex, but if you use a complex example too, then it's even worse. So I'm using simple, very simple examples, but just get the concept. Okay, so now what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to return maybe the second instance, the third instance, or the fourth instance of a name, for example. You know what I did just now was returning everything. So look at this, for example, Mike. Mike appears, okay, 2 times. Yeah, let me just add one other Mike here. Let me just make this Mike. Okay, so Mike appears 3 times. So I want to say he has 75 here, he has 99, he has 89. I want to be able to return, you know, like the second instance, you know, which will mean that in this case, it needs to be 99, the third, you know, the first, and so on. So let me show you how you're going to do that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the filter function, okay? So let's say I'm going to put the instance here. I'm going to put, let's say instance. Let me say I want to do instance 2. I'll leave that. So let's come to the score. I'm going to do the same filter function because I want to return the scores. So it means I'm going to select what scores. Okay. So this is what I'm going to select. Okay. So I'm filtering on the score. Now, what's my include criteria? My include criteria is where the name is equals to what? Whatever is in here. If it's Mike, I want it to be equal to Mike. So I select my name. This is a table, so I can select this one. It's equals to this. Okay. So it's very simple. It's going to give me the scores so long as it's Mike. Right? Okay. Well, now you see that it spills, right? 75, 99, 89. But what I'm interested in is I'm interested in the second instance, meaning I am interested in what? This value. Okay. 99. So what I can do in this case is I will just wrap the filter within an index. Okay, because index can look at this as an array and return the second row, right? Simple enough. So what I'm going to do is instead of, you know, sweating, I'm just going to put an index function. The index already has its array. The array is what you're seeing in there, and the instance is whatever you have here. So meaning that from that array, give me the second one. Okay, so that's kind of how I would do like an instance-specific lookup. Okay, so now let's change the name. Let's change this to Victor, because I like Victor. And then let me change this to maybe 3. Do I have? Okay, so the third instance. So you see Victor is 75, 67, and 95. So you're just using a simple index function on top of the filter. Now, the index on top of the filter just helps you to extract. So if somebody says, I want the 10th instance or 15th instance of this, you use the filter to get, you know, the entire array. You use the index function to select, you know, the particular elements you're interested in. Works very simple. Okay, so I'm almost done. I hope I haven't done a lot. I was thinking before the session that I didn't have enough, but most times when I get to do the session, I kind of start to feel like, Victor, I think you're doing too much now. But I'm sorry, I apologize. I traveled all the way from Nigeria to Saudi Arabia, so I need to put up a good appearance, right? Okay, so now let me show this example. It's similar to the first, but I'm just going to make it a little spicy. I think Faraz likes that word. Yeah, so this is what this is. You have a list of order IDs. You know, of course, you could order for something and in that order, it has multiple items, right? So for example, this is order 501 and you have wristwatch socks. So it's not just one item. So what we want to be able to do is that we have a small table here somebody has put together. If this 516 is the first instance in this table, I want it to return, you know, from the table 516 and the first instance. This is the black. If it's the second instance, I want it to return a pen. If it's the third instance, I want it to return a shoe. So it's the same example as the last one. The only difference is that I don't have, you know, in this one, I put the instance in a cell to make it very easy. But in this one, I don't have the instance. I'm going to figure out the instance. That's all I'm going to do. So I'm just going to add a little count if in there to figure that out. It's simple. Okay. You'll be the judge of that. Okay. So, all right. So now let's go the same way. We are just trying to return for this ID, you know, we want to return the items, but I need to be able to know, is this the first instance, second instance? So let's start again, the same thing, filter, right? We'll filter on the items. These are the items. Control Shift down, F4. Now, what's my criteria, include criteria? My include criteria is if the ID, it's the ID is equals to the ID I have here. Okay, so that's it. Now, you can see that with 516, it's already giving me toothbrush, plaque, and pens, right? So those 3 are there. But now I need to be able to figure out that is this row 516, is this the first time 516 is appearing in this data? Is it the second time? Is it the third time? Once I know that, I will feed it into the index function, exactly what I did before, right? So it's the same example, but just making it a little more complex. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I will obviously put an index there. You know that if I put index and say, you know, comma 2, it's going to give me plaque. You know that already. Let me show you that, right? You can see that. Okay, so it's simple. It's giving me the second one. But now I want to make these two dynamic in such a way that it figures it out from the table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a count if. I'm going to say count if. Now, the range you're going to count is very tricky, but it's something most people should know. I'm going to count starting from the first cell, you know, to whichever row I'm on. So in this case, what it means is I'm kind of doing something like this. But really, this is what I'm doing, right? I'm starting from the first cell in the table, and I'm stopping where I am. So it's like saying, okay, start from the top of the table. How many 5/16 have you seen till you get to me? Okay? So if you've seen only one, if you've not seen anyone, and when you get to me, you're seeing one, I'm the first, obviously. By the time you count and you've seen one before me, it means I'm the second one, you know? So that's kind of what I'm doing. So start from the top, but I'm not counting all the way, because if you select the entire range, it will give you the total number. It will tell you that there are 3 5/16. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to restrict the range. You will not appreciate it at this point until I show you in one of the lower cells. But let me show you that. So once you do this, so you can just do a count if, you know, within that range, and count how many times this one appears. So that's kind of it. Okay, so I'm counting in that range, how many times does 5/16 appear? Let me close this and show you. So see this. Okay, so now see what happens here. So this is how it works. So you see Plek now, the range is going to be counting from K3 to K4. It's going to start from the top. It's going to count up to itself. And once it counts to itself, it will realize that it has seen 1 5/16 here, it has seen a second one, it will give you 2. But if you use a count if and just count the entire thing, it would always give you 3 because there are 3 of them in there. So what I've just done in this example is just to make my count dynamic. So at every point, what this guy is doing is checking. So it's going from the top. How many times has 571 appeared? Is this one 571? No. Is this one 571? No. Is this one 571? No. Oh, there's a 571 here. That means there's one instance already. There's a 571 here, meaning I'm the second instance. Let me evaluate this for you to see, so that you see that this gives you 2. That gives you 2. So that's kind of just what I'm doing. I'm just doing the same thing I did the last time, but this time I'm just kind of responding to the data itself rather than hard coding and saying instance 2, instance 1. So whatever, you know, instance it is, it can figure it out. So once it figures out that, you know, this is the second instance, it will return the second item. If it's the third instance, it will return the third item, you know, and kind of so on. So that's this example. This was a real problem I solved for somebody. The data was kind of HR related, you know, like you have a job ID, and for that job, there are like 3 people that get the job. And they wanted on another, you know, on another sheet to be able to return like multiple instances. Okay, so but of course, since I can't share that data, I had to just create my own with us buying a toothbrush, and you know, I think that would be more interesting. Okay, and that's what I wanted to show on that. Okay, no, this one is just something very simple, right? Okay, I didn't even intend to show this. Well, you know that XLOOKUP can work in returning maybe images, for example. Let me just show you a simple example. What I've just done here is that I've selected, I've listed all the countries in the world, and I've turned them to like geography data type. I'll just show you. I didn't intend to show it, but you know, just something to show. And let's say I have here, I just have Nigeria here. You know, I could use like the XLOOKUP to kind of return, you know, the flag, the image of Nigeria. So I could do XLOOKUP. You know, I look up Nigeria in this range here, because this range has, you know, all the countries in the world, but it has them as data types. But it's tricky, but I'll show you how to do it. Just something I just put together. I was thinking, should I show it? Should I not show it? But then I'm here, so let me. Okay, so it's like this, show this, and then so you're looking up Nigeria in this list, and you want to return, you know, this dot image. The image will give you the flag of that country. That's kind of what it's going to do. So it's kind of saying, look for Nigeria in this list, okay? And when you see it, don't just return the value in this cell here, return dot image of that value. But this is not going to work, and I'll tell you why. Okay, now why doesn't it work? Because Nigeria here is text. The Nigeria that you have in here is actually a data type. It's not a text. So you're not doing a look, what's it called? A like-for-like comparison, right? You're not comparing apples to apples. You have to match those two to make that work. Okay, so what you need to do is this. Rather than saying lookup F2 in B2 to 198, you put a dot here and you say the dot name. So what it means is that rather than looking at it as a geography data type, give me the name of that geography data type, okay? So meaning that don't give me Afghanistan as a data type, give me the text itself. So that's what I'm doing. So just to explain the logic, it means that look for Nigeria in this list, but convert this list to a text first, and then return the image, associated image, something like that. So with that, I can get this. If I change this to Cameroon, that's the Cameroon flag, Ghana, France. So you could have it in some interesting dashboard. This will be on another sheet, and you're just kind of doing a lookup and you're returning the country flag. But I didn't intend to show that, but well, since it was on the sheet, let me do it. Okay, so now this is my last example. This is supposed to end by 7:30. I have 7 minutes, but I know I will just eat into a little, maybe into the time for questions. And then, yeah, I'm sure some people would rather see me do it than ask me questions, but this is my last example. And let me just explain the example. We will do it. Oh, please do Scotland. Somebody wants to confuse me. That's why I said I should do Scotland. Let me even check if Scotland is on my list. I love this kind of challenges. See? I know it was being sarcastic. Because it was like, what we have there is the UK. So I'll say then the next thing you hear is do Northern Ireland. Stephen, that's not fair. Okay, so, but you get the idea, right? Okay, so let me show you this last example. And this is an interesting example where I use the choose function to kind of create, a dynamic chart. So what I'm trying to simulate here, let me explain the concept and then just show you what I did. It's simple to follow, but so I have 4 charts here. So this is the last thing I'm doing anyway. Yeah, you can see I've gotten to the end of my work. So this is the last thing. So I have 4 charts here. I have this chart 1. Okay, this is just a world map. I just have this. So they are, again, this could be related data in the real sense of it. So it could be actually like 4 quarters, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Okay, but I just did 4 unrelated things just so that we can see distinction between it. This chart 3 and this chart 4. Okay, and what I want to be able to do is that I want to have like this sheet, I call this sheet like a sneak peek sheet. I did this somewhere using hyperlinks, kind of hover over, then my chart changes, stuff like that. So what I've done here now is this. So this is the idea. It's like you want to be able to see those 4 charts or those 4 sheets on one sheet. And by just changing maybe the name or an index, it can show you that. So what I've done is kind of link all of that together in such a way that I'm using a slider here, okay, which is like, I'm mixing the name of the control. Sorry, my head is just a bit too full. Let me get that. Yeah, that's the scroll bar. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. Yeah, that's the scroll bar. Yeah, so with the scroll bar, once I, kind of move once, okay, so I kind of have, so it's like just moving with the scroll bar, I'm able to kind of show, the chart. So I could use it for like multiple, charts. I could have like 10 charts in there, and then I'm just showing all of them using just one location, okay? So by just moving the scroll bar, I'm picking data from multiple places. And what's actually driving this is actually the choose, function. But let me show you, kind of how to set it up quickly so that you kind of see, what's going on here. Then that'll be all. So you notice that, you can copy, for example, look at this. You can copy a range. If I copy this range here, I can copy this range, and then I could paste it as a picture. It's not using the camera, so I just paste it. Now I go to paste special, and I paste it as a picture. Okay, so you see that even though I selected the range here, but because the chart was there, it changes. Now, you know that you can actually change using the formula bar. You can change this. If I change this, that was chart 1 I did, right? This chart 1. What I've done is I've positioned all of them in the same range. Okay, so chart 2 is also in the same range. So if I go back to that new sheet I created, look at this. This is a picture, but I can come here and just change the reference and say, this is chart 2, okay, right? And it gives me what I have in chart 2 within the range that I'm looking at. So this is like a picture and a formula working together. Chart 3, I made the names easy so that I could just use them easy, right? Chart 4. Okay, so the starting point is, copying a range, pasting it as a picture. And then what I'm just trying to do is now just trying to make the formula dynamic in such a way that, with the dynamic formula, as things change, it responds accordingly. So let me kind of see if we can, set this up. Let me create a new sheet here, right? So I'm going to use, I'm going to use the, what's it called? Like the choose function, you know, to kind of set that up. So let's say here we have a select sheet. Let me just show you how I did that. So let's say sheet here is 1. I can do 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I will now put a choose function here. So this, sorry, that's power, but it will be back. Okay. So this choose. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, it's back. Sorry about that. Okay. So choose function. Sorry. So now this is going to be my index. Okay. So 1. And then, so what it means is that whatever I choose from here, then I'm going to select. So I will say chart 1, just watch what I'm doing. Chart 2. These are the names of the sheets, okay? I'm just putting the sheet names. I just decided to use choose for this just to show it. So look at this. Okay, so if I say 2, this will become what? Chart 2. If I say 3, this will become chart 3, okay? That's simply how, you know, the choose works. Okay, so I've given it an index, and then I've given it, you know, value 1, value 2, value 3. So that's really all I'm doing, okay? So now, so once you do that, all I want to do is this. I will now copy, maybe, let me just create one of them. Let me use this one. Let me just copy this. Let me bring that chart here. I just want to kind of show you guys. Then I'm going to paste this as an image. So paste special, what's the time? 7:29, okay. All right, so paste this as an image. Okay, so fine. So this is this. Right? So what I want to be able to do is to be able to control what is shown here based on the choose function. So this is what I'm going to do first of all. I want to use that zoom slider. Sorry, the scroll bar. I keep calling it the zoom slider. So I'm going to pick my developer tab. I'm going to insert, and then I'm going to pick, you know, like the scroll bar. Okay. So I'm just going to set up the scroll bar somewhere here like this. Now, you know that for all these controls, you can link it to, as in a cell, to say that if the first item is selected, put 1 in a cell. The second item is selected, put 2. So I right-click this and I do format control. Okay, because in my own case, I know that, you know, I have what? 4 values. Okay, so I will say that I'm starting from 1 and my maximum value is 4 because I know I have 4 charts. That's just for this example. To start from 1 and go to 4. Now, what cell do I want to link? What I'm trying to do here is that whenever the person slides once, you should select 1. If he slides the second time, 2, 3, 4. So it means this cell will keep changing based on whatever the person chooses from the slider. That's what it means. So do okay. Let's watch that and see. So if I slide this once now, you see that it becomes 2. And because the choose is responding to this, it becomes chart 2. Then I select this again, it becomes 3. I select this, it becomes 4. You see that? Okay, so this slider is now controlling this cell. And then the choose function is also linked to this cell, and the choose function is responding accordingly. Okay, so now we are almost done with it. The only thing I'm going to add is that I want this chart, you know, to be linked, the formula in here to be linked to, I'll create a named range, you know, such that that named range would pick from whatever this chart 4 is and picks from a certain range. Look at this. Let me just show you what I did. For each of the charts, I selected E2 to P26. So they're all in the same region, right? Just to make it easy. So E2 to P26. So that's what you will see everywhere. So here, if you look at E2 to P26, that's kind of the range that covers it, okay? So what I'm going to do is this. So let me go back to here. So I'm just going to use the indirect function. I'm going to use the indirect function because what am I trying to do? This has given me the name of the sheet. But after giving me the name of the sheet, for me to get the range, I need to concatenate it. You know how to reference a sheet? Look at this. If I wanted to reference a range in a sheet, what would I do? You know, I'll do something like this. You see what it gives me? It gives me charts D2 to Q26. That's kind of what I want to simulate here. So I'm going to, you know, put an indirect here. I'm almost done, actually. It's pretty easy. So this choose will give me the name of the sheet. What am I going to do? I'm going to concatenate it with an exclamation mark. And I know the range I'm interested in is E2 to P26. That's all. Okay, so that's what I'm interested in. You can see that it actually shows you the range in there, right? But now what I would now do is I would take this to the name manager, right? So there will be a named range that will be referencing this. So that named range would be what I would tie to this chart so that whenever, you know, you will see how everything is linked anyway. So let me go to the name manager. Let me just create a new name and call it choose DYN, choose dynamic. And then I'll paste that in there. We'll have 2 equal signs, okay? All right, so choose DYN, I didn't spell that correctly, choose, okay? And then I do okay. All right, so what I'm now going to do is this. For this chart, in the formula bar, I'm going to reference choose DYN. That's what I'm going to do. I thought, is that what I did? Yes, sorry. Let me go back and see what's wrong with my C3. It looks like it's fine. Can someone tell me what I did wrong? Okay, let me see. Sheet 7. Yeah, I think I'm fine. Let me do it here. Let me just do it here and see. Sorry, just okay. Yeah, it works. So if I slide this, yeah, I think it's working. Yeah. So let me see. So what am I doing wrong? Choose DYN. I'm not sure why that is. I created another range. Let me try the other range I've created before. Sometimes this thing can be funny. I created choose RNG. Is this any different from what I did? Just see. Okay. Yeah, it's not looking any different. Okay, but yeah. Anyway, let me use the one I'd used before. Let's see if that works. Okay. Well, I wouldn't sweat that one now, you know. So that happens in presentation. So essentially, that's what I've done. I've created a dynamic named range, you know. So the idea here is that when I move the slider will change this value, and then this value will change that dynamic range, and the chart will then pick, you know, from that dynamic range. So what it means is that this is going to be 2. So when you do 2, for some reason, okay. So let me go back to that one. This one is different. Yes. So let me come here. I think that one is a little messy. So when I change the slider, you can see it changes to 3, you know, and then the chart picks it up. When I do it, it changes to 2, the chart picks up, changes to 1, the chart picks it up. So kind of choose is what's working behind. So choose is just helping us to choose, you know, from whatever number you've chosen here, based on if you choose 1, it's going to pick from chart 1, it's going to pick from chart 2 as 2, 3, 4, and so on. And that way you can have kind of create in one place, you know, an image that can pick data from, you know, a lot of places here. So I don't want to, my normal habit is to try and fix that problem now, but I would resist the temptation to do that. So since I have it working and you kind of follow the idea of what's going on, the idea is really simple. Create the choose function, then create, you know, a scroll bar. The scroll bar, whatever value you choose will come into this cell. And when it comes into the cell, the choose will pick based on that. And then that range is using an indirect and, you know, whatever you've chosen here. Okay, so that's, I think, my last example. Somebody saying choose slider. Whatever it's called, yes. So it's kind of like you choose with a slider, but being able to see things in one place. I did this with the hyperlink. I kind of hover over and then I get it to work. Yeah, but that's, you know, just something, you know, I thought to share. When I'm done with this, I'll look at what was going wrong with that, but I don't want to even look at it right now. So I think at this point, I would say I am done. And I hope you've enjoyed, you know, the time, and I hope I didn't confuse you too much. Of course, there were a few, you know, glitches here and there just to show that I'm human. I saw some people saying I'm not human in the chat, but I am, you know, so at least you can see that now. So Faraz, over to you.
Okay, Victor, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, this is really lovely, you know, and going through that, starting it gradually and increasing that tempo, you know, that is really lovely, Victor.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that is really lovely. You know, in fact, the ambulance is waiting for me right now, and Oz is here also.
Faraz, this was not lovely. Quit saying that word. It was intense, electrifying, brutal, merciless. Lovely, no. Worthwhile, yes. Lovely is for ball gowns. This was not a ball gown. This was a big stick.
Yeah, and as usual, you know, Victor, he does that.
Yes, yes.
Lovely.
Also, in all sincerity, I didn't plan to do that. I felt these things were very simple. That was my intention, you know, but maybe I was wrong once again.
Oh, no. You all right? You all right? Yeah, you all right? I am not complaining.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
So
good.
that's
So
lovely, my friends. So
It's not lovely. You can
okay,
say
that's
lovely.
brutal. That's brutal, my friends. That's brutal,
It was
and it's insane. It's electrifying. It's shocking, and there's a thousands of volts of electrifying power coming from Nigeria all the way to Saudi Arabia on this Saudi Excel meetup.
yeah.
Well, it was really lovely, Victor, to having you over here, and it's
thank
always,
you.
uh, exciting and very suspense whenever I have always attended your meetups. I didn't miss the chance for that.
Yeah,
It's really lovely for coming, giving your time on this meetup, and
thank you.
we would be also looking in future for some more electrifying shocks like this to coming up. And as usual, before we end the live, and I always ask my speakers, to give any last word, any kind of a quote or anything, a closing note. And uh, and friends, after this meetup, there will be a next meetup in the month of March for Carlos. So don't forget that. And for that, I'll be doing it in a very special way.
Oh,
So just make sure that you follow my channel, and I'll be doing it in a very special way, that announcement. So, Victor,
this
your last and final
All right.
word.
Okay. Well, so I just saw two people I think I need to say hi to. So Grania, and if I pronounce
Grania.
that correctly,
That's right.
Grania,
The
and then
second time on camera for Grania.
Hi guys, hi Victor, hi Faraz,
hi,
hi
and then the
Claudia.
second person is Claudia. I can see
Address.
Claudia too. So hi, Claudia. Okay, so at
Hello
least those are my
everyone.
Hello.
some of my
Oi, oi.
new friends from London. Okay, so I think lastly, I'll just say first of all, I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity. Really, I always do, because I mean, there are a lot of people who are doing fantastic things out there. So when I get invited, I don't take it for granted. So I first of all appreciate the invite, and it's always nice to be in a community of people who are passionate about Excel. It kind of feels like I'm at a party, so sometimes maybe that's why the excitement is so much, because you're with people of like minds. And I think all I would say at this point, because I tend to talk too much, is just to say that let's continue to keep up the good work. Let's continue to share. I don't think there's anything as good as sharing knowledge. That's why I'm always happy to be at these meetups, either as a presenter or as an attendee, because you always learn. Even for people who felt maybe they knew some things about XLOOKUP, maybe you learned one or two things today, and that's the same way I learn when I go to other sessions too. So let's continue, to share. Let's continue to keep the community alive. Excel is not going anywhere, so neither are we. So I think that's where I'll leave it.
Right.
So,
Great. So, my friends, we'll be signing out from YouTube right now, but we'll be still staying back on the Zoom. So stay here, and there'll be party going on. So YouTube, bye.
They're pulling the black
Oz.
curtain out. Yeah, see?
Oz, you have to say something.
I've got to say something. What do you mean? Why are you putting me on the spot? What am I supposed to say?
Okay, guys. Bye from the YouTube.
Oh, okay. All right.